Yeah, it's your boy DJ, aka Young Dash. Yeah, this is my second shout out video. Let's get into it. That's it. No, I'm just playing. Hey, not Junior. Um, Shout out to Isabella Solis. Sorry for not making you my first one. It was too long. Shout out to. Whew. Hey, that was hard to swallow. Alright, but yeah. Shout out to Shateria Johnson. Shout out to Julia. Oh, no, yeah, shout out to her. Shout out to her. Shout out to her. Shout out to her. Dang. Alright. Shout out to Paige Hanks. You live. You in that thing. Shout out to Kanasia Dixon. Shout out to Cole Ingram. Shout out to D'Anthony Bullitt. Shout out to Mark Brand. Shout out to Dom Duran Lee. Joey, Tavares, Marquise. The hell wrong with my dog? Show my dog. Rosie. Shout out to Daquan McKinney. Shout out to Darren Holtz. Shout out to. I'm just gonna start shouting out my friends list. Shout out to Marcus Shafir. Shout out to Denise Book and So Fancy. Shout out to Denisha. Fucking nigga thoughts, pal. Shout out to Derek Nelson. That's my West nigga. I don't rip the rest up with the phone. Shout out to Destiny 1204. I think I already done it. Shout out to her, but anyway. Shout out to this multi-fit bar thing I'm about to eat. Shout out to that nigga Devin. Chill, bro. And shout out to Devontae motherfucking Brown. Shout out to Diamond. Lil Jerkin Diamond, not my big sister Diamond. Shout out to DeJounte Weary. Shout out to Deion Spears. Shout out to Dolly. Shout out to Dominique Johnson. My sister Dominique Thomas. Shout out to the Mexican boy Dose, whatever you are. Shout out to Drake Klein. Shout out to Stucky. Shout out to EJ Mays. Shout out to Alondra. Who the fuck is this? Shout out to Elise Lopez. Shout out to people at the Teen Center. Shout out to Alicia Harris. Shout out to Aaron Colin. Whatever. Aaron Thomas. Arian Flowers. Shout out to Gregory Stokes. Shout out to Tiana. Shout out to Haley Kearney. Shout out to Isaiah. Fuck. Shout out to that nigga Jamal Branch. Shout out to that girl Jamaica. Shout out to Jasmine Lyons. Shout out to Jasmine Harris. Shout out to Jasmine Clark. Shout out to Jasmine Willis. Shout out to Jatarian Kennedy. Shout out to Jasmine Fody. Shout out to Denise Steelers. Shout out to JJ. Shout out to Jeremy. Shout out to John Knights. Shout out to John Knights. Jordan Spike, Jordan Winters, Jose San, Justin Mayfield, Josh Lynns, Ryans, Josiah. Shout out to Julian Chambers, Julia King, Juliet Mills, Julius Quienioso, whatever his name is. Shout out to Jess Davis. Shout out to Justin Brisson, Justin Lopez, Justin Significant Joe, Justice Chambers, Juwan Hudges, Kai Boganera, Kyla Solive Anderson, Kaylee Evans, Caitlin Evans, Caitlin Renee Evans, Kayla Backbreaker Brock, Kalisha Wright, Callie Bishop, Kalisha Torrance, Cameron Johnson, Camilla Person, Kenda Bebe. I don't know. Shout out to that nigga Kapua. I think the barking. I'm working on it. Shout out to Donna, not Butler. Shout out to her too. Shout out to Kendall, Jaden, Xavier, them little niggas. Shout out to Kiara Holtz, Kiara Williams, Kiara Carsell, Kiara Moody, Kid Crazy. Shout out to all these clean best bodies, live is most respected, party days, finest known, live is most hands, prettiest, and finest top teens. I was all in those. Shout out to Kimberly Marshall, shout out to Keon, shout out to Kirsten, shout out to Courtney, shout out to Kwame, Austin, Kyle Maxey, Kif, not forget her. Shout out to Sharisha. Shout out to Lauren Tilton, Levante McCombs. Shout out to Mark Powell, Mark Branch, Marquise Love Hurt. McKaylin White. Fuck you. Megan Foul got. Shout out to that nigga Micah. Shout out to Mia. Shout out to that nigga Michael Lawrence, your bro nigga. Shout out to Michael Mango. Shout out to Migdalia. Shout out to Miguel Moreno. Shout out to Milan. Shout out to Maisha. Hold on. A rock and roll body. Shout out to Materica. Shout out to Montreal. Shout out to Marshall Grover, Monterico, Rami. Shout out to Maisha. Shout out to Naomi Hall. Shout out to Natalie Jackson. Shout out to Natasha Rory, Nathaniel Oberly, Nautica Headley, Nakia Carey. Some of these people I don't know. All these Nolan's finest, Nolan's realist or fakest, Nolan's smash or pass, Nolan's fakest to realist. Shout out to Naya. Head ass. Shout out to O'Shea. Shout out to Portia Rice. Oh no. Shout out to Frazier. Shout out to Priya. Shout out to Princeton. Shout out to Priscilla. Shout out to Priscilla Garcia and Priscilla Villanueva. Shout out to Quan. Shout out to Quentin. Shout out to Rashawn. Shout out to Rashawn. Shout out to Rashawn. Shout out to Randy. The West niggas. Shout out to Rashard. Shout out to Raul. Shout out to Reggie Blash. Shout out to Ricardo Campbell. Little mood swing ass man. Shout out to Ronald Martin. Shout out to Sam Sanfretta, Sarah James, Sarah Durant. Shout out to Savannah Cook. Shout out to that nigga Shakur. Shout out to that nigga Shakayla. Shout out to your mama. No, just fine. Hold on, you know you love me when you see me. That's why you said yes. Shout out to dang. Shout out to shout out to Shaisha. Well, yeah. Shout out to Sharlena. You know I threw that ball at you and kicked that ball at you. Eh? Black folks. I hate black people. Shout out to the dogs, Rosie and Junior. Shout out to Star Wary. Shout out to my other mom, Stephanie. Shout out to Stefan Adams, Stefan Guerrero, Steve. Shout out to Samarion. Shout out to Miss Sonia. Shout out to Tiandra. Shout out to Tanika. Shout out to Tara. Shout out to Tashani. Shout out to Tavion. Shout out to Taylor, Catherine Lucas. Shout out to Taylor Montana. Shout out to Taylor Stiles. Shout out to Deja. Shout out to Terrence, Tisha, Tiz, Ty. Shout out to Tia, Tanaj, TK, Tobias, Torrance, TJ, Trey, Trayvon, Trey, Edwards and Trey Amos, Trayvon Brown, Tristan Elisic, Ty Brinson, Tyreek Beckett, Wesley, Weston, Will, Randolph, Cuzzo, Will Smith, Taylor Gang Smith, that's my cousin, Xavier Robinson, Xavier Reese, Yamirez, Frankie, Yasir, Yasmin Thomas. Shout out to that nigga Zena, shout out to Zakara, shout out to Zach, shout out to Zach Dexter, Zach Hoffman. Hold on. Back to what I was saying, shout out to Zakoya, shout out to Zaya. Last but not least, shout out to hey, I don't know last but not least. There's one more person. Shout out to Madison Knapp. Shout out to dang, I know there's one more person that's in my head. And shout out to Benny Gregor, Anthony Drew, Anthony Ferguson. Oh, okay. Shout out to Mr. Steve, Mr. Marcus, Mr. Marlo, Miss Crystal, and Miss Norma. Shout out to everybody that I missed. I'm sorry I couldn't think of your names right now, but yeah. So what we're finna do now, I don't know. I think I should get off or South Dallas way. I don't know. Everybody rock. Everybody.